Okay, so you want to open a gaming cafe. Maybe you're a gamer yourself. Maybe you walked past a packed LAN center on a Friday night, saw 40 screens glowing, every seat full, people paying by the hour just to sit in chairs and play video games, and thought, I could do that. I could build a room, fill it with PCs, and get paid every hour someone sits down. The honest answer is maybe, possibly. Depending on a set of variables that have quietly bankrupted more gaming cafes than most people realize. There are cafes running 15 seats in a strip mall that clear 6 figures a year in pure profit. There are cafes that opened with $300,000 of investor money and closed within 18 months, hardware still under warranty. The difference is not the games people play, it is economics, and the economics of a gaming cafe are almost nothing like what most people imagine walking in the door. Here is what it actually looks like from the inside. The first thing to understand is what a gaming cafe actually sells. It doesn't sell games. It sells time on a chair, and that chair is attached to the single most depreciating asset category in retail, computer hardware. A gaming PC that costs you $2,000 to build today is worth a fraction of that in 3 years. Not because it breaks, but because the games your customers want to play next year will need a graphics card that doesn't exist yet. You are not buying furniture. You are buying a wasting asset that ages whether or not anyone ever sits in the chair. A single high-end gaming station, the kind that can run competitive titles at high frame rates on a wide monitor, typically costs between $2,000 and $3,500 once you include the case, the peripherals, and the desk setup. A serious cafe with 30 seats is looking at $60,000 to $100,000 in hardware alone before a single customer walks in. That number is the first thing that determines whether your business plan survives contact with reality. Now add the room. Commercial lease costs vary wildly by city, but a viable gaming cafe generally needs somewhere between 1,500 and 4,000 square feet because the machines, the walkways, and the seating all eat space fast. In a mid-sized market that might run $3,000 to $8,000 a month in rent alone, before you've paid for electricity, before you've hired anyone, before you've sold a single hour of playtime. And electricity is not a minor line item here. A high-end gaming PC with a large monitor can draw somewhere around 400 to 600 watts under load. Multiply that across 30 machines running 8, 10, 12 hours a day. Add air conditioning, working overtime to cool a room full of machines that are, functionally, 30 small space heaters, and your power bill becomes one of the largest recurring costs in the business. Cafe owners who don't model this properly are often shocked the first time a summer electricity bill lands on their desk. Then there's the network. Competitive gamers are ruthless about latency. A cafe that can't guarantee low ping and stable connections will lose its core customers to literally any competitor down the street with better internet. That means commercial-grade fiber, redundant connections, and often a dedicated IT person, just to keep the network humming. Because when the Wi-Fi drops during a ranked match, that customer is not coming back. Let's say you've built all of this. The room is done, the machines are racked, the network is solid. Now you need permits and licensing, and this is where a lot of first-time owners get blindsided. Depending on where you are, you may need a business license, an entertainment or arcade permit, food service permits if you're selling snacks and drinks. And critically, you need to think about software licensing. Most game publishers have specific commercial use or cybercafe licensing terms, separate from a normal home license. And running unlicensed commercial copies of popular titles is a legal liability that has shut cafes down before they ever built a customer base. Now, the ongoing economics. A gaming cafe typically makes money 3 ways: hourly seat rental, food and beverage sales, and events like tournaments or private bookings. The seat rental is usually the smallest margin of the 3. You might charge somewhere between $3 and $8 an hour per seat depending on your market. And that revenue has to cover the electricity, the internet, the staff, and the equipment depreciation before a single dollar becomes profit. This is why almost every successful gaming cafe treats food and drinks as the real business. Energy drinks, snacks, coffee, sometimes a full kitchen, because the margin on a $5 energy drink that costs you $1 wholesale is dramatically better than the margin on an hour of seat time. Staffing is a constant cost that doesn't scale down on slow nights. You need someone at the front desk during every open hour, and if you're running late night hours, which most gaming cafes do because that's when demand peaks, you're paying night shift wages for shifts that might only have 6 customers in the building. Add a technician who can fix a machine when a GPU dies mid-tournament, because downtime on even 2 or 3 seats out of 30 is real revenue walking out the door every single hour those seats sit broken. Here's the trap at the center of every gaming cafe's economics. Your costs are almost entirely fixed. The rent doesn't drop on a slow Tuesday. The lease payment on your hardware financing doesn't pause because it rained and nobody came in. The staff still needs to be paid whether the room is at 10% capacity or 90. But your revenue is driven by something you only partially control. Foot traffic, which depends on local competition, on whether the hot new game everyone wants to play runs well on your hardware, on whether a bigger, newer cafe just opened 2 miles away with better chairs and faster machines. And hardware doesn't just depreciate quietly in the background, it actively obsoletes your business model. A cafe that built its whole floor around graphics cards from a few years ago can find itself unable to run the newest competitive titles at the frame rate serious players expect. And in gaming culture, being the cafe with old rigs spreads fast. Most successful operators plan a partial hardware refresh every 3 to 4 years, essentially rebuying a meaningful chunk of their core asset on a schedule, whether the original machines are broken or not. This is where a lot of cafes actually fail. Not because nobody showed up on opening week. Opening week is often the best week they'll ever have, but because the owner didn't build a reserve for the refresh cycle, or didn't account for how much of their thin hourly margin gets eaten by rent and power before payroll, and 2 or 3 years in, with machines aging and a newer competitor opening across town, the math that worked on day 1 quietly stops working. The cafes that do work tend to share a pattern. They diversify revenue hard, tournaments, coaching, streaming setups for content creators, private event bookings for birthdays and corporate team nights. So seat hour rental is one stream among several, not the whole business. They negotiate real commercial internet contracts instead of residential connections stretched past their limits. They build food and beverage into a genuine margin center instead of an afterthought. And critically, they treat the hardware refresh cycle as a planned budgeted cost from day 1, not a surprise that shows up when customers start complaining and the machines feel slow. None of this means owning a gaming cafe is a bad idea. It means it's a business built on managing the gap between two things that move independently. A fixed, unforgiving cost structure built around rent, power, and rapidly aging equipment. And a revenue stream that depends entirely on whether people choose to walk through your door tonight instead of playing at home or at the cafe down the street. The cafes that get this right aren't the ones with the most machines or the flashiest neon sign. They're the ones where the owner understood before signing the lease that they weren't really in the business of selling video games. They were in the business of managing depreciation, foot traffic, and razor-thin hourly margins all at the same time, indefinitely. And if you can make that math work consistently across hardware cycles, rent increases, and whatever the next competitor down the street decides to build, then yes, a gaming cafe can be a genuinely good business. But that's not what most people are picturing when they imagine the neon sign and the packed room on a Friday night.